Continuing with the Barebow form series, we're going to be working on the second half of the set position today, specifically hook and grip, as well as the actual positioning that you'll be in before you go to lift the bow. I am working on a form series just like I did for recurve archery, but this way it's with my Barebow here. And I'm going to be showing you all of the details of the KSL shot cycle, the NTS system, or the best method, depending on when and where you're from. And I'll have links in the description below for the rest of the playlist, plus a card at the top up there, so you can start with that in case you haven't yet. I'm really working to just make a good solid foundation for you to reference if you're going to use the KSL shot cycle or the NTS system. We've already covered stance and posture and how to get there properly. Now we're going to cover hook and grip and get into the position of actual set position. So set position, again, briefly, is as we have the arrow knocked on the bow itself and we are straddling the shooting line and we are ready to shoot with our hands set into the bow right before we go to lift the bow. That is set position. Grip is very simple and it changes very little from Olympic style recurve. There are a couple little nuances. I'll be sure to mention those, but it's essentially the same. You know, we're shooting the same type of bow. The only thing that really changes in my experience is when we start string walking and we get into a deeper crawl, it really affects the way the grip feels. So there are definitely some ways that you can work on making it feel the same. For me, mine was cutting it as low as humanly possible. A high risk grip I found is just really difficult to control, especially when you're crawling really deep like I do due to my low anchor, and it just really does not feel well, and I don't hold very steady on the short shots. So cutting it as low as humanly possible, within reason of course. You know, I'm not all the way as low as I could possibly be, and I'm not shooting off the riser, but it's really low compared to a standard Olympic style recurve grip. Next would be when you set things like I do. If you're using a grip sear, then it's a little bit different. I found that I don't set my grip sear down here in set position. I set my hand position first. I'm going to show you how to set your hand, and then after I get to full draw, I set my grip sear. So that might be something for you to play with if you are messing with a grip sear or playing with things like that. I've just noticed that I change the tension in my grip and the torque on the bow if I set my hand and my grip sear down here before I lift the bow. I do that after I start drawing the bow back. Now, as far as the proper hand position in the bow, it starts with basically the stop position. If you were to tell somebody to stop coming at you and then curl your fingers down, that's about the proper grip angle right there. The knuckles themselves right here should be at roughly a 45-degree angle, give or take. Everybody's slightly different. Everybody's hand size and grip shape is slightly different, but roughly a 45-degree angle like so, and then the thumb kind of sticks out like this, but these fingers stay relaxed and curled down like that. They do not tense up. You're not actually gripping the bow. This is something that you will need a finger sling or a wrist sling usually, although I've shot Barebow without a finger sling at all and it was just fine. I didn't even grip the bow at all either. You know, due to the way that these bows are set up with the weights in these type of configurations, the bow doesn't jump and react nearly like an Olympic style recurve. It's actually, once you get it set up correctly, it's not as violent as an Olympic style recurve as far as how it jumps and the swinging and things like that. So I found actually you don't even really need a finger sling, but you know, it's good to have because we're not actually gripping onto the bow like this. We're not holding the bow grip like this at full draw, because when you do those type of things, you can impart too much torque on the bow, and that easily will affect your impact points. So it's a 45-degree angle. The grip edge, this edge here, this edge on this left side, if you're a right-handed shooter, will kind of sit right along this lifeline. So if you were to look at my hand, and you can see the lifeline here, that's where the grip edge sits when I'm at this 45-degree angle like that. The grip kind of comes down like this and cuts into my hand. So up close, you'll see lifeline, grip edge, fingers down. My index finger, I rest like this on the front of my riser because tucking it back like this is just, I'm holding onto the bow too much and it's not very comfortable. So resting it like that feels a whole lot more comfortable. We're also down in this position here like this, like I said, like you're telling somebody to stop with your fingers curled. Stop, fingers curled. And so I'm pushing my pressure down low into the grip down here. It's a much stronger position to be in. Basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the pressure in my bow arm, in these bones in my bow arm, and I'm focusing it into the pressure point of my wrist. So you can see the bone comes through the wrist, through the hand, and this is the main pressure point that I'm pushing onto the grip of the bow. There are two main parts of a grip, the pivot point and the pressure point. The pressure point is where you push your pressure, and you'll notice where I have my grip tape stuck on here, this is skateboard decking, that's right where I push my pressure into the grip. That's where I feel comfortable pushing, and that's why I have a relatively small piece, and it's right centered on where I push pressure. It's just an extra little bit of kind of tactile feedback on where you can push pressure into the grip. So once you do that, your thumb kind of heads forward like this. You're not necessarily going to be out like that. It's just kind of pointing at the target, but the thumbnail you can kind of see from this position like that instead of like that. So you're not gripping the bow. You don't want to grip and hold the bow with your hand a whole lot. Again, due to torque and things like that. But there is a slight little nuance that not a lot of people know about, and it's very, very difficult to show on camera. It's a lot easier for me to show you using your hand as a grip. If anyone has ever worked with me or gone to a seminar that I held, if this is my grip, pressure point, pivot point, I can grab the bow and show you, if it was your hand, how I'm actually kind of squeezing and holding onto the bow. Now, I'm not holding onto the bow, I'm not gripping the bow, but I am squeezing the bow here between my index finger knuckle and my thumb knuckle. I'm putting a little bit of pressure in, and that's allowing me to really get down into that pressure point and feel solid. It also increases my contact in the bow itself and gives me a little bit more control, and I can really feel if I'm torquing the bow at all that way. It's a small, tiny little detail, and it's just a little bit of pressure. You know, in the past, I've talked about intensity, right? And I've mentioned it many, many times. This is a 0. Squeezing as hard as you can is a 10. I'm doing a 2. I can close my hand with a 2. I can squeeze the grip with a 2. It's not very much, just a tiny little bit of pressure. And as I do that, I've really hyper-focused that pressure down into the bottom part of the grip and that pressure point. And now, from this point forward, I keep my hand the same. I do not move it. Some other things you can actually do too to get into a proper position to maintain this stop position. Stop is this way, right? Stop is not this way. Many people will push into the grip like this and kind of sit their hands in like this and kind of push on this left edge of the grip, which is adding a lot of torque into the bow. The string is more likely to hit your arm because the bow will want to turn that direction as you're pushing the pressure on the outside. So it ends up causing a fair amount of problems. I also would not yell at you to stop like this. In this position, I stop like this. Pinky comes towards me, thumb goes towards you. Pinky comes towards me, thumb goes towards the target. So if this is my target, I'm not holding like this, where my hand is this direction. I'm pulling my pinky back towards me and my thumb going forward. Pinky back, thumb forward, just like that. That is the best bow hand grip position you can possibly have. And it works the same for Olympic style recurve, compound, barebow, traditional, everything. That's how I would set my hand in the grip, and that's how I'd shoot it. Now, you don't have to have a custom grip like I do that's built up like this. I can put my proper hand position anywhere on the riser in the proper position. It really doesn't matter where it is, what the slope looks like, where I'm putting my hand on the bow. Pinky back, thumb forward, pressure point low. Anywhere I put my hand, I can put my hand in the proper position, and I could pull the bow back in the proper way with my hand anywhere on the riser because I know how to put my hand in the proper position for a good, strong base to shoot off of. The next thing would be hook. Now, hook is definitely different from barebow to recurve in my experience. I don't think it always has to be different, but I think depending on your individual shooting style, where you're anchoring and how much clearance you have on your face with your fingers, your hook's gonna be slightly different. At least mine has changed very slightly. So for this, I will nock an arrow, so I'll be able to show you a little bit easier as to what I'm talking about. But Olympic style recurve, we have more pressure on our index finger, next is the middle, and then the ring finger just kind of sits there. This pressure that I'm talking about is set at brace height only. It is not what you feel at full draw. What you feel at full draw is more or less a balance between the three, but how you get into the correct position is dictated at brace height. And at brace height, I can set all the index finger pressure I want and no pressure of my middle and ring finger until I start setting them on the string. But I dictate that by the position I am in. This is the position, more like this actually, but my fingers, the three fingers I shoot with, are in this position with Olympic style recurve. More curl on the index finger, less on the middle, and the bottom has the least. And while I'm at full draw with Olympic style recurve, this is what my hook looks like. I'll do it at full draw. Even though I have 3 under, I can achieve Olympic style recurve hook position like this, where you can't see my index finger or my middle fingernail, but you can see my ring fingernail from this angle here. Now, what is different for Barebow? And this is important for me to mention before we move too far forward. This is unfortunately going to take some due diligence and some playing and experimenting on your part, but I'm going to give you some caveats to the KSL shot cycle, the NTS system, that you need to know when applying how you hook the string to Barebow. Now, due to my Barebow anchor, which is a lot lower, this is my actual Barebow anchor here. I'll demonstrate it really quick, like this. So it's a lot lower than your traditional, index finger on the canine tooth up here. I find it just to be a lot more comfortable. We'll talk about that in the anchor section in a little bit. But due to where I anchor, I have to change my hook a little bit. Mainly, I don't actually squeeze as much with my index finger. It's because where I anchor and where I sit here, my index finger sits like this on my jawbone. And if I were to have it curled as much as I normally do with Olympic style recurve, I'm actually pushing into my face and my hand starts to move away from my face and I start to bend my wrist in the wrong direction. And it's not ideal for the alignment that I'm trying to achieve, and it's really not ideal for a clean string path past my face when I go to release. So I actually use less index finger curl, and I set it down here at brace height just like how I have it at full draw. So just like Olympic style recurve, when you set your hook down here, it should stay the same and never change until you go to release the string. So what I actually do is I'm more in this type of position right here with the way I'm hooking. So when I come back to full draw, it stays the same and I don't have to change it. If I were to set my hook as an Olympic style recurve hook, a lot of index finger curl and not nearly as much on the bottom too. When I come into anchor, see how I have this index finger dug into the side of my chin? I would have to release a little bit of that tension in order to be able to anchor controlled and comfortably without digging into my face. And basically what happens is I'm in this position like that. So when I go to let go, I can't really quite let go. I have to have less index finger curl while at full draw in my anchor, again, because of the change in anchor. So there is a slight change there. It is not ideal. Could I anchor slightly different to make that better? Potentially, but it's Barebow. You're supposed to be having fun and just making whatever you got work for you. So I do have a little bit less index finger curl, but I still have a whole lot of middle finger curl, and my bottom finger is roughly the same as it is when I shoot Olympic style recurve, where it's just kind of resting on the string like that. So instead of being in this position at full draw, I'm in like that kind of position. So not that, more like that. So it's a very small change. I still hook up onto the string, specifically with that index and middle finger. What I mean by hooking up is when I hook onto the string, instead of just hooking flat like this, I hook more up like that. So I have an upward angle on my wrist, and my two fingers, the middle and index finger, mostly just the middle, not as much the index, hooks upwards at full draw because I'm about like that, not like that. So instead of here, I'm more there. So if I were to show you where the pressure is on my fingers, it would be down on these bottom parts of my finger down here more than the middle part of my finger. Especially on this middle finger, I'm pushing a lot of pressure right there instead of in this middle section or the top section of my finger. It gets me into a better position here with my anchor as opposed to being flat with my hand like this, because that's where an even hook this way, not an upward hook. An even hook would drop your wrist down relative to your face and may not give you as solid of an anchor. That upward hook, that upward angle like this, allows me to really feel solid in my anchor, and it really doesn't change my elbow position at all. Now, just like Olympic style recurve, how I hook the string is basically the same. I start on my fingertips and roll in, but you know, it's a little tougher to do due to string walking and string crawling. So when I set my hook on the string, or I set my crawl rather, I'm just gonna come down here, crawl. Now I have my thumb on the string, just like so, and I am starting my hook, and I start to grip and roll in just like I do on Olympic style recurve. Rolling in is pretty simple. I just start on the tips of my fingers like this, and then I hook into the string like that. So I'm starting here and I'm hooking in instead of starting here and letting it kind of hold into my fingertips like that. So I'm not hooking deep like this and letting it set. I'm starting on my tips and rolling in. After I set my crawl, just so you guys know, I move my tab down, but I don't put the tab plate back up against the string and then draw back. I set my crawl and then I hook onto the string wherever my fingers are comfortable, and I do not pay attention to the tab plate. I pay attention to my finger placement on the string, because that's really what's dictating my crawl and what changes my crawl, not the tab plate position. If I started with my tab plate up against the string and then I go to hook, it's doing the exact opposite of how I set my fingers on the string with Olympic style recurve, and it's going to cause numbness and tingling and things like that that I've addressed in the past. Now, when I'm talking about numbness and tingling, I'm referencing how you hook onto the string. So hooking onto the string, those two different ways, coming from the wrong way to the right way, changes how much meat or how much protection is between the string and the nerves that are in my fingertips, right? And if you hook the way you shouldn't be, you'll definitely get some dulling, some numbness, some tingling, and some overall discomfort in your fingertips after shooting a lot, because the way you hook onto it, the nerves of your fingers are really exposed, not literally to the air, but they're really, really exposed and sensitive to pressure on the fingers, and acute pressure specifically from the string. So the way I hook is, if you roll in from the tip, you'll see a pad of meat kind of build up between the string and where the nerves are in my fingers. So the nerves where they are closest to the surface of the skin is right near the joint, and that's kind of where we're hooking onto the string. So when you do that kind of hooking incorrectly, you're really exposing the nerves that are right there in those joint surfaces of your fingers, and that pressure will absolutely cause some nerve damage. I've dealt with numbness and tingling a lot in my shooting career until I hooked the correct way. Once I did that, all that went away and I never had any issue. I do have a video specifically talking about how to prevent numbness and tingling in your fingers, and if you're looking for more information on that, I'll have links in the description below, plus a card at the top up there for you to check out. That is more for Olympic style recurve, but you'll see how hooking onto the string can dramatically affect basically what you feel, literally feel, after shooting archery or while shooting archery. Now, where I hook onto the string relative to my fingers is the same as Olympic style recurve, basically. It's basically like this. This is where the string touches my fingers. You'll see this joint here, I'm hooking on this side of this joint. And on all the fingers, I am on this side of the joint, and you should always be on your finger pad, not on the joint and not deeper than that first knuckle. If you go deeper than that first knuckle, your release is just gonna never be clean. And if you're more towards the fingertip like this, you're dangerously close to letting the string go and causing a lot of extra tension and pressure into your hand that you really don't need. So kind of being close to the joint but not on the joint is definitely the ideal place. Due to my drawing hand and the discrepancies of the lengths of my fingers, you'll see that this joint here This knuckle basically is really far forward compared to my index finger. So when I'm hooking, I'm actually crossing that joint like that. And I find that that's okay for me. I'm not going to tell you that you should do that, but that's the only way that I could do that without pulling my middle finger back like this, and then it would look weird and feel weird at full draw. The bottom finger, it just kind of sits there. Again, that's going to really depend on your individual finger lengths. You'll see that my index and ring finger are roughly the same length, but when I go to do that upward hook, my bottom finger just kind of rests and sits on that string, but I lock into that position as I draw back. Also, just like Olympic style recurve, when you do draw the bow back, your hand position, the hook position, should not change ideally. So when I go to hook the string, however I hook, right, as I go from this position all the way to full draw, the hook doesn't change. My fingers don't lose. I'm not, as I'm drawing back, going from good position to less than ideal position as I'm drawing back. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm increasing the pressure on the string as I'm drawing the back, which is clearly obvious because as you draw the bow back, the bow gets heavier, it's harder to hold onto the string. To maintain the same position, you must then increase intensity that you're hooking onto the string with to keep it the same as you pull back. With time, this will become easier and you'll really be able to feel it. As you're new to this, you can start and practice in front of the mirror and checking and seeing and watching yourself. Am I losing my fingers? Am I losing my hook or anything like that as I'm drawing back? Now, what about the actual position of set position? How do we start drawing the bow back? When I'm in set position, it's just like Olympic style recurve, but I'll go over it again. I already have my elbow behind the arrow line, just like you would ideally want while at full draw, in set position. So before I even pull the bow back, my elbow's already behind the arrow line. The whole idea would be to try to keep your elbow behind the arrow line to be in the best alignment possible. So if I were to draw the bow back and point at you, you'll see my elbow is pretty much in line, if not behind the arrow line. And if I were to aim the other direction, you'll see like this, the elbow is pretty much in line with the arrow. If I was in bad alignment, I'd be like this. Ideal alignment is the elbow behind the arrow line while at full draw. So you can get that way here in set position really easily. My hand, my bow hand, is always directly between me and my target. If you are my target, my hand is here. It's straight out towards you, my target. So as I go to lift, this is my bow hand movement, right? From here to here. So my bow hand is not to the right and it's not to the left. It's actually directly between me and my target. And so therefore the riser is as well. But I am not pointing the arrow at you. I'm actually pointing the arrow to the left of you. I'm a right-handed shooter. My arrow's pointing to the left of my target. And so when I do that, I hook my fingers on the string. Where's my elbow relative to the arrow? It is behind the arrow line already, and I haven't even lifted the bow. Haven't even drawn back. So instead of between you, which would be me, kind of, and the target, if I have the bow hand between you two, and I hook while pointing at the target, you'll see my elbow is outside the arrow line. But if I have my arrow pointing to the left, now my elbow is behind the arrow line as I go from set position and move forward. So in set position, to get your elbow behind the arrow line, it's really easy. Instead of the arrow pointing at you, the target, and my hand being at you at the target, all I do is I move my string hand out, away from my body. So instead of being here, I'm here. That's it. Really simple. And I'll be able to start feeling the pull, and I can start to actually rotate and start to set the alignment that I'm looking for, straight alignment to hold the bow back, in this position right here as I go from set position, and then I can start lifting the bow and drawing the bow back, and my elbow should, and hopefully will, stay behind the arrow line the entire time. Also in set position here, something to note for sure with barebow that I've noticed is a change. When I set my crawl, you know, I'm up here like this, kind of holding onto the bow. I get close, I eyeball it, and then I set my crawl, set my hook, and then I go into set position. What happens here in my back shoulder? It goes up. because I'm holding it up. I typically have it elevated because I'm trying to, you know, find my crawl, right? So I've noticed that my shoulder, when I'm shooting barebow versus recurve, is higher while I'm at full draw. And my wife noted that. She's like, hey, you don't look the same with barebow that you do with recurve. And it took me a while to figure out. There's 2 points. One was how I draw the bow back, but we're not quite there yet. And the first one was actually, instead of after my crawl, I was sitting like here to go to draw back. Shoulder started in the wrong position to begin with, too high. So I have to, after I hook, I have to manually and physically tell myself, relax. I have to actually drop my shoulder again and then draw my bow back from there. So I have noticed there's a little bit of extra work needed and an extra step of relax again after you hook, because Olympic style recurve, I'd kind of be relaxed right here with that breathing technique that I use that I've already covered in stance and posture. Because of the string walking part, you got to make sure this shoulder stays down and level like this. I'm not pushing into the bow as I go to draw back because there's a lot of torso movement here, things like that. Shoulders stay level, arrow points to the left of the target, hand is directly between me and my target. I've got my hook set, my grip set, my stance set, my posture set, and now I'm ready to go. Now it is also time to address the target. So addressing the target would be stance, hook, grip, posture, and now instead of staring down here at my hands and immediately lifting the bow and going to pull the bow back, I will address the target. I look at you, my target. After I've hooked, grip, stance, and posture, I look up and I take just an extra moment before I go to lift the bow. I'm acquiring the target. My head is set in the ideal position that I normally am, as close to I can while at full draw, instead of cocking sideways or looking in different positions. Some people have the tendency to lift their head up and then as they draw the bow back, kind of set back down into it. Natural, normal, hook, grip, stance, posture, relax, address the target, and then go from there. So set position is here. Now down here in set position, it is optional to start to essentially get into alignment like this. So instead of being more in a triangle between these 3 spots, being more in a line like this, that is optional before you go to lift the bow. I find that it really puts my shoulder into a susceptible position to injury, specifically from impingement issues, although I have shoulder issues to begin with. So, you know, I would just be careful of that. I prefer to start more in this triangle position here and then set the alignment as I am lifting the bow. Now, something to note is how far forward or back to be. I'm not adding any tension at all. I'm just hooking on the string and I'm relatively pretty much here at brace height. But if you decide to do this whole rotation thing, you're gonna draw the bow back slightly. So that's just something to also take into consideration. If you're looking for a great resource to reference in addition to these videos and my recurve form series, I'll have links in the description below for a book called Total Archery Inside the Archer. It's written by my coach, Keesick Lee, as well as a teammate of mine, Tyler Benner, and really takes you through step by step how to apply the KSL shot cycle or the NTS system to Olympic style recurve. And as you're seeing already, a lot of it is directly applicable to barebow archery. But again, I'll have links in the description below for that in case you're interested. And please check out my apparel, as well as many ways to support this channel, because I'm really trying to produce quality content for free for you to absorb at home anywhere you are in the world. And there will be a lot of links in the description below on how you can support this channel. I greatly appreciate everyone's support and allows me to produce more of this content for free for everyone else out there. You'll notice that I don't have any paywalls to access this type of information, and I'm giving you everything that I possibly can. I'm not holding anything back to incentivize you to pay to get that extra little bit of information. You're getting it for free, and I'm really happy to help. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider hitting the subscription button and the notification bell, as well as the like button. I would appreciate it. Also, please consider supporting my channel. If you head to my website, jakekaminski.com, there'll be info and links on Patreon, apparel, books, and equipment sales, PayPal donate button, a P.O. box to send things to, and above all else, please share this video because there's no better advertising than word of mouth.